Sleepy town settling for the night, where every lawn is tailored just right, and it's about time that the back porch light comes on. At that house down the street, at that house on Magnolia Street. What up, slut?
Howdy do.
Great. Good morning. I made myself a matcha latte.
Here we are again. Oh, that looks good.
It's very frothy.
It kind of looks like pesto mayo or something like that.
Ew.
It's
Pesto mayo. Ew. We've had that matcha powder for a while. I don't even know if that stuff goes bad.
I have no
But
idea.
I'm like, we've had it for a while. I should probably just use the rest of it.
Yeah.
So I've been drinking matchas. I haven't had one in a while. So I'm just like,
That's a great glass.
good.
It's
Yeah.
like mason jar with a handle.
Where's my chalk? I was gonna write
Put
slut.
slut on it today. Get some chalk. That's cute.
I don't know where my chalk went. So part two. We're still talking about sluts.
Here we are. Hey, witch, hey.
Hey witch, hey. I'm Justina.
I'm Christina. Welcome to Magnolia Street, your one and only musically inspired practical magic fandom podcast.
Every week we deep dive on different aspects of the movie and the books, as well as treat your ears to our very own practical magic inspired original music. So this is part 2 of Slut Praise, and last week we took you guys on a little journey and discovered the OG sluts that paved the way.
Yeah. Again, this week we'll have some possibly triggering words and lots of opinions on both sides, as well as, you guessed it, the history and where female identifying people are now with this construct.
Yeah, so as a reminder, this made it onto our topics list from the very beginning, not because of that one line, since when is being a slut a crime in this family? But because throughout the movie and the books, Alice makes a point to color Jillian in a sex-positive light. She loves who she loves, and she doesn't make it complicated.
Yeah, we're diving right in, kind of where we left off last time. We have a couple books in this episode, this part 2. The first book we're going to start with was actually the first book I read in 2024, and it was for the purpose of this episode, but it is called Conjuring the Sex Positive, Witches, Sluts, and Feminists by Kristen J. Soleil. And the cover is really pretty badass. It's black and yellow, and it just has a set of lips, like Rocky Horror Picture Show lips, but they're black lipstick.
It kind of reminds me of like Christina Aguilera during her stripped phase. Do you remember the stripped phase?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She like went completely... She dyed her hair black at one point, and
she had a few different personalities throughout the
yeah.
ages. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but I'm sorry, that's like my favorite era of hers.
Her grunginess.
Grungy stripped era.
Yeah.
I think she just made the best music during that time. Whatever she was going through.
Well, this book, Witches, Sluts, Feminists, Conjuring the Sex Positive, is an introduction to the sex-positive history of the witch. With a focus on sexual liberation, this book traces the lineage of, quote, witch feminism through art, film, music, fashion, literature, technology, religion, pop culture, and politics. It's like our show in a book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mixed bag.
It's a mixed bag. I
Yeah.
think you would really like this book. It's not long.
Yeah.
But it delves into reproductive rights, sexual pleasure, pornography, queer identity, body positivity, and sex work, and demonstrates why the, quote, slut is in many ways the, quote, witch of the 21st century. At the time, slut had recently been listed in the Atlantic's Worst Words of 2012. The anti-victim blaming slut walk movement, which we'll talk much more in depth about later, was also gaining traction, and slut shaming was becoming a frequently covered topic in the media, playing upon the power of the word slut with both tongue-in-cheek revelry and dead seriousness. We're not going to go through each chapter there. I thought I listed out like the names of the chapters, but the ones that we're going to pull from, Justina and I are just going to touch on little bits that deal with our topic today. This is the beginning introduction, Witches, Sluts, Feminists. In the exploration of the intertwined narratives of Witches, Sluts, Feminists, the book delves into the historical use of the term witch as a tool to punish women and regulate female sexuality. Similarly, the contemporary counterpart slut has emerged as a prevalent and damning epitaph in the ongoing policing of women's behavior. Despite the evolution of names and punishments over the centuries, the oppressive attitudes and behaviors towards women persist, reminiscent of the early modern witch hunts. Within the context of this book, the term witch embodies a complex symbolism, representing female divinity, ferocity, and transgression. Yet the witch remains profoundly misunderstood, mirroring the enduring societal misconceptions that have surrounded powerful women throughout history. On the other hand, the evolution of the term slut is traced from the 15th century Old English roots we talked about last episode, initially referring to a dirty or unkempt woman. Over time, it's transformed into a derogatory label for sexual promiscuous women, perpetuating harmful stereotypes. The book highlights the destructive potential of defining a woman's worth based on perceived or actual sexual activity, emphasizing the contrast of societal attitudes toward male counterparts. While terms like player and cad, are there any other ones? Bachelor, right? We talked about in our, what episode was that? Spinsters? I think spinsters.
Oh, yeah. I think you're right.
May define a man's sexual activity, they often carry a positive connotation, showcasing the double standard and fewer restrictions imposed on male sexual expression. Through these historical and contemporary perspectives, witches, sluts, feminists, this book aims to unravel the complex interplay between language, societal norms, and the persistent challenges faced by women in navigating cultural expectations, which, like slut, is difficult to define, and yet we have come to understand what it means. Number one, the first definition reflects how the witch was characterized during the witch hunting era. The witch is evil, malicious, sorceress or sorcerer who is driven by the devil. The second definition follows this line of thinking into vivid aesthetic expression. The witch embodies the horror of the aging woman, the hag or the spinster, female fecundity dried up and worthlessness to the man looking for nubile flesh and a repository for his seed still grows. Women are frightening for being unattractive, sexually unappealing, and past their prime, and yet they are frightening. They are frightening when young and attractive because the witch is also charming, bewitching, beguiling, and sexually irresistible with her mysterious feminine wiles. And the third definition brings us to the 12th century with the Wiccan religion movement, popularized by Gerald Gardner in the 1950s, Great Britain. Wicca is a nature-based practice with adherents who often proudly bear the title of witch. Wiccans are also pagans, a group of diverse nature worshippers who number over 1 million in the United States.
So let's talk about which slut are you? The medieval to the modern ages. So in Christianity, the witch's earliest ancestor is Eve, which we talked a little bit about in part 1 of this topic. If you want to go listen to that one's from last week. The original bad girl of the Bible, Eve is cast as weak and susceptible to Satan, ravenous for forbidden knowledge, preferred in apple form by his slithery minion. Eve's actions cause humankind to be cast out of paradise and sentenced to suffer for eternity. And from this origin story a virulent strain of sexism began to solidify. Prevailing archetypes of womanhood in the Bible become virgin, obedient wife, or deviant whore. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live, states Exodus 22:18, a directive flanked by advice on how to buy a bride and why you shouldn't commit bestiality. By the early modern era, the archetypal witch embodied the fear of female flesh unchained. Devious and obscene, everything about her flew in the face of patriarchal authority. To study this history is to peer into the abyss of fear, sexist violence, and toxic masculinity that dominates feminist discourse today. Shifting our focus to the Malleus Maleficarum, published in 1486, we encounter a connection between witchcraft and carnal lust. The infamous quote, "All witchcraft comes from carnal lust, which is, in women, insatiable," end quote, highlights the gendered nature of accusations during this period. Confessions during the witch trials walk a fine line between pleasure and horror, reflecting the prevailing view that pleasurable sensory experiences were deeply sinful. As we navigate through history, Anne Barstow's Insights in Witch Craze, a new history of the European witch hunts, shed light on the legal recognition of women accused of witchcraft in the mid-16th century. This newfound legal scrutiny unveils both the vulnerability of women and the deep-seated anti-feminism in European society at the time. Specific types of women, such as adulteresses, fornicators, and midwives, were singled out in the Malleus Maleficarum, but the extent of their persecution remains unclear. Bringing this historical exploration into a modern context, Jessica Valenti's article for The Guardian, titled What Makes a Slut? The only rule, it seems, is being female. End quote. That's the entire name of the article.
I think we have this like more full in depth about this article in a little bit.
Okay.
I think.
So this draws intriguing parallels between historical witchcraft accusations and contemporary slut shaming. Isn't it crazy how like not much has really changed since the ancient times? Right?
Yes.
Crazy.
We
like
fuck it all up. It's
we're 2024, people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, okay, so although any woman can be deemed a slut, more explicit erotic actions are an express ticket to the top of the list. And contrary to what some might think, slut shaming, aka being judged for your real or perceived sexual expression, isn't solely perpetrated by men. And weren't we just saying that in the last episode, part 1, how like I feel like most of the slut shamers I've known in my day have all been other women.
Yes, they have. You're correct.
Like. So a 2014 study by a cross-party think tank found that women on Twitter slut? Oh, on Twitter, comma. Punctuation is our friend. On Twitter, comma, slut shame other women almost as much as men do, maybe even more. A 2013 study by Cornell University published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships found that female participants rated a hypothetical woman with 20 sexual partners as less competent, less emotionally stable, I guess less warm and more dominant than a hypothetical woman or less dominant. I don't know if it's saying more or less dominant than a hypothetical woman who only had, say, 2 lovers.
Right? This gives me like Meatloaf vibes of like I would do anything for love, but I won't do that.
What won't you do?
There's a really, really good. Yeah, he said that his writer who passed away like the year before, the guy he worked with, Martin, something or other. He's like, "Are you sure you want to word it that way? Do you think people will get it?" And Meatloaf's like, "Yeah, it'll be fine." And then he's like, "I should have taken his word for it because people don't get it."
Yeah. What is he saying that he won't do?
So he lists like I would never lie to you. I would never do this at the beginning of the verse or the beginning of the song. So by the time he gets to the chorus, he's like, I would do anything for love, but I won't do that. Like I won't lie to you.
Okay.
That's
got it. Thanks for clearing that up.
So somebody who has many partners is seen as less emotionally stable, less warm, and less dominant than somebody who only has 2.
I think that's what that's saying.
Okay. So this chapter, so Justine and I are going kind of chapter by chapter here. This one's called All-American Witch, Salem's Legacy. Throughout history, female sexuality has been held responsible for both society's men and their morality. This perception reached its peak in 17th century New England, where female bodies and minds were often envisioned as dark and noxious spaces inherently inclined toward vice. Within the framework, women were considered the weaker and more corruptible sex, further reinforcing their perceived link with the devil. As we transition to the specific context of 17th century New England, it's notable that the Puritans, despite their strict moral code, approached witch dealings with a degree of relative chastity compared to their European counterparts. According to Stacy Schiff, New England's witches, quote, rarely enjoyed sexual congress with the devil. This departure from the European narrative reflects a nuanced perspective on female sexuality during the Salem witch trials and other American witch hunts. While patriarchal figures have historically viewed female sexuality unfavorably, unless they themselves were engaging in it, it played a comparative smaller role in the witch trials of the American colonies. So deviating just a little bit from this book for a moment to look at this article called Whores and Witches. This is, Justine, I might let you take this one. I thought this was really interesting. It is a insight into the women of the Pendleton witch trials in 1612.
Okay. Yeah, so this is from dangerouswomenproject.org. This article says, the text delves into the historical context of the Pendle witch trials in 1612, exploring the intertwining of accusations of witchcraft with societal perceptions of women's behavior, particularly regarding their sexuality. It focuses on specific cases, primarily Elizabeth Southerns and her family, accused of witchcraft due to perceived immoral conduct such as having illegitimate children and engaging in relationships outside of marriage. Elizabeth Southerns, known as Old Demdike, and her granddaughter Alison Device were targeted by Richard Baldwin, a miller.
Pause. Alison Device sounds like a RuPaul drag name. Alizon Device.
Yeah, what?
Alison Device.
Alison. What up, Alison?
Okay.
So they were targeted by this dude, Richard Baldwin. He was a
Alec
miller who
Baldwin's other brother.
Alec Baldwin's bloodline.
Yeah, yeah,
Their early ancestors,
yeah.
right? Aren't the Baldwins like the Chads of Hollywood?
The- oh God.
The Baldwin's earliest ancestor, Richard Baldwin, he was a miller who angrily referred to them as whores and witches. This verbal assault underscored a prevailing theme in the trials: the association between sexual promiscuity and devilish practices. These accusations stemmed from societal norms that deemed impoverished, widowed, or herbalist women as suspicious and potentially dangerous. The article dissects the Southerns and the Device family's reputation, revealing Elizabeth Southern's illegitimate child, Christopher Holgate, prior to her marriage, a widely known fact in their small community. Her daughter, Elizabeth Device, also faced scrutiny for bearing children outside of wedlock. The family lived in poverty, relying on begging for income, while their neighbors mocked and ostracized them, emphasizing their perceived moral bankruptcy and raising suspicions about their capabilities for malevolent actions.
Did you get my Marco last night?
Yeah.
For the boarding.
But in the movie, The Crucible, wasn't Winona Ryder's character like the promiscuous girl? She was sleeping with John Proctor, a married man.
She was.
Right? But in reality, she was only like 14 years old. She wasn't even old enough to like.
Yeah. That was fabricated, right?
That was for Hollywood.
Okay.
They wrote that into the script, but
oh, dude, the best line, what is he says? You have brought down Salem and raised up a whore or some shit like that. And I'm like, that's such a good line. Daniel Day-Lewis, so handsome.
Yeah, they did depict her a little differently, Abigail Williams, a little differently in the movie than reality, right? So another case highlighted is that of Jeanette Preston. She was tried separately from the other accused witches. She was accused of bewitching Master Thomas Lister, a gentleman, to death. So she bewitched him to death?
Oh, shit.
I don't know what that means.
Did she? Okay. My first thing is, did she have sex with him and he died during sex? Secondly, I played Sims years ago and I made Aaron and I, but Aaron aged up in The Sims before I did. And our Sims were having sex and he aged up and I killed him.
Oh my God. You witch.
I know.
Trollop.
Aaron.
Oh my goodness, that's so funny. So while there were no direct accusations of illicit affairs, Taylor Swift has a really good song, "Illicit Affairs."
Oh yeah,
yeah, okay. Yeah. She also has a song called "Slut." She just
really? Okay.
Yeah. So accusations of illicit affairs or illegitimate children against Jeanette. Hints in court transcripts suggest an underlying concern with improper sexual conduct. The relationship between Master Lister and Jeanette, subtly implied in the records, raises questions about the nature of their associations and its potential role in the accusations. The text emphasizes the significant role societal norms regarding women's sexual behavior played in labeling them as witches. Women who deviated from accepted norms, having children outside of marriage, or engaging in extramarital affairs were seen as challenging the established social order. This behavior was perceived as subversive and possibly linked to dealings with the devil. The society of the time equated loose morals with witchcraft, offering a convenient accusation when no other motive sufficed. Exactly. So if he mysteriously died during sex and there was no other explanation, of course she's a witch.
Yep.
So, in conclusion, the trials of the Pendle witches in 1612 highlights, and this predates the Salem witch trials,
Sure
1612, highlights the intertwined perceptions of women's behavior, sexuality, and accusations of witchcraft. These historical events serve as a lens to understand how societal norms surrounding women's conduct were leveraged to vilify and condemn those perceived as deviating from the accepted moral standards of the time.
Time after time. Tale as old as time.
All right, so going back to that book that we were talking about earlier, this chapter is called The Midwife, Bestial Bodies and Reproductive Rights. So the association of witchcraft with sex-related crimes extended to include midwives and women involved in teaching birth control methods or providing abortifacients and abortions. This interconnected narrative reveals a historical pattern where accusations of witchcraft were often weaponized against those who held knowledge or practices related to sexual and reproductive health. And again, not much has changed today. Like anybody who lives in a conservative state, I feel sorry for them. Because doctors can't even fucking do their jobs anymore.
Nope.
You know?
It just makes them more dangerous to us. What fucking state was like, we're so pro-life, we want a death penalty for women who choose to get abortions. Okay, so
I
you're gonna deal with
think it was Texas. If
motherfucker.
I could be wrong, but I mean, Texas is pretty bad.
Fucking backwards, man.
Yeah. While the execution of midwives and female healers for such reasons is now viewed as a grievous error of the past, the lingering impact persists. Many men, often in positions of power, surprise fucking prize, continue to exhibit willful ignorance regarding biological facts concerning sexual and reproductive health. This echoes a troubling reality where religious and government officials leverage their authority to undermine female bodily autonomy, a phenomenon that remains prevalent in modern America 100%. Illustrating this point, in 2012, Republican Senator Rick Santorum from Pennsylvania. Speaking of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's bananas. Did you hear about that witch on TikTok? She just runs a witch shop and she reads tarot, and they're trying to like shut her shop down or like legally go after her.
There's another Pennsylvanian somebody in like a head council I follow, and she's an active witch, and she shows up to like their town meetings and shit like that, all witched out.
That's amazing.
I'll have to find her and send her to you.
That's amazing. So this Rick Santorum from Pennsylvania, the senator, he weighed in on the subject of contraception, echoing sentiments reminiscent of the witch trials. Santorum declared that birth control is, quote, not okay, and represents a, quote, license to do things in the sexual realm that is counter to how things are supposed to be.
Fuck this guy.
Fuck this guy. This statement...
Santorum, suck a dick.
Yeah, really. This statement reflects an alarming alignment between historical attitudes toward women's reproductive autonomy and contemporary political discourse, highlighting the enduring struggle for control over female bodies and choices. The early modern witch hunts served in part to discipline and punish female bodies. According to Sylvia Federici in Caliban and the Witch, women, the body, and primitive accumulation, the witch hunts can be also linked to the contemporary development of a new sexual division of labor, confining women to reproductive work. This sexual division of labor largely remains intact, and the women who seek to undermine its supremacy by exerting control over their own reproductive function are often viewed through the same lens accused witches once were. Today's sluts seeking birth control and basic reproductive freedoms are hardly different from satanic witch midwives of yesteryear.
It's the Handmaid's Tale. That's what they want.
Yeah, that's scary.
Because more babies equal more workforce, equal more middle to lower class who they can tax. All right.
Bullshit. This topic makes me so angry.
I know. I was editing our last episode and I could hear myself like getting like
pissed.
Like I was like, yes, and this, and we are goddesses, and yes.
Oh my god, yeah.
Speaking, we're going to continue on the next episode. The next chapter was called Political Witch, Rebellion, and Revolution. Let's start with a quote. This is from Samuel in the Bible, 15:23. For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. A historical figure who played a pivotal role in the reclamation of the divine feminine in the term witch is Matilda Jocelyn Gage. As the first known suffragette to embrace the term, Gage was not only an abolitionist, but also a staunch advocate for women's rights. In her 1893 work, Women, Church, and State, she provided a searing critique of patriarchal religion and its collaboration with the state. Gage's anti-clerical stance resonates even today, as her writings humanize the persecuted witch and influenced L. Frank Baum's characterization of Glinda the Good Witch in The Wizard of Oz. As Baum's mother-in-law, the eldest stateswoman of the feminists had a major impact on his writings, saying Matilda Jocelyn Gage Foundation founding director, Dr. Sally Resch Wagner. So is this saying that this woman, Gage, influenced the Glinda the Good Witch for Frank Baum? That's cool.
Baum.
Moving forward in time, radical feminist Mary Daly, in a 1980 introduction into a reprint of Gage's book, praised Gage's method as, quote, not merely chronologically, but chronologically. Daly emphasized the universality of Gage's work, stating that every woman can be seen as a witch and a political dissident, a concept that gained movement during the feminist explosion in the 1960s. The Women's International Terrorist Conspiracy from Hell, WITCH, played a crucial role in reviving and celebrating the witch as a political symbol. Their chant during the, quote, conspiracy against women reflects a Macbethian protest language calling attention to societal judgments and injustices faced by women. The line, quote, "If you are a woman and dare to look within yourself, you are a witch," encapsulates the empowering idea that every woman possesses the potential for resistance and political dissent. And that is a jet. There's a witch in every woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
This heady brew of Macbethian protest language WITCH crafted for their conspiracy against women chant could easily be revived today by your own activist coven. Double, bubble, war, and rubble. When you mess with women, you'll be in trouble. We're convicted of murder if abortion is planned, convicted of shame if we don't have a man, convicted of conspiracy if we fight for our rights, and burned at the stake when we stand up to fight. Ooh.
Truth bomb.
Fucking truth bomb. Jax Blackmore, who's a satanic activist and artist, she says that the idea of the witch has always been about subversive feminine power that doesn't align with conventional norms. It has been used to control and demonize women consistently. Women who had privileged economic positions, women who were smart, women who had experience in medicine, women who were outspoken, women who were sexually promiscuous. Female independence and sexual independence is still frightening because it liberates us from oppressive structures and having to rely on a patriarchal system to grant us power. And there was quite a lot in this section about the damning of Hillary Clinton during that time. This little section was called Hillary Clinton, Wicked Witch of the Left. Yeah. Yeah, this chapter went in depth about the Hillary-Trump race and the sheer explosion of what, and I cannot stress this enough, in the fuckery some of these people were thinking that year. Like, what in the actual fuck? The only part I took out of this says, when, quote, bitch won't suffice to denigrate a woman, quote, witch adds an element of supernatural evil that has no male equivalent in common use. I'm all fired up.
Yeah. That whole election, that entire administration for those 4 years was probably the worst fucking most stressful 4 years of my fucking life.
Yes, absolutely. I was just enraged for 4 straight years.
Exactly. Yeah. This chapter is titled Art Witch. Wanton woodcuts and domestic goddesses. So following the incitement of public fascination with demonic sensuality by the Malleus Maleficarum, the first illustrated witchcraft treatise emerged in 1489, authored by German legal scholar Ulrich Molitor, titled, quote, On Witches and Female Soothsayers, end quote. This groundbreaking work featured woodcut prints that brought to life the previously abstract concept of the Satan-loving sorceress. Satan! Hail Satan! The illustrations depicted witches embracing the devil, half human and half animal creatures, riding cooking forks, gatherings around cauldrons, and sinister conversations between wicked sisters over a meal. I'm sorry, but that sounds like a good time to me.
You want to be my wicked sister?
Let's have a good wicked meal.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Surprisingly, between 1489 and 1669, still before the Salem witch trials, more editions of Molitor's treatise were printed than even the Malleus Maleficarum itself. This raises the intriguing question of which text had a more profound impact on shaping European perceptions of witches. Molitor's work didn't merely remain confined to literature, it permeated the realm of fine art, leaving an indelible mark on influential figures like Hans Baldung Green, Albrecht Dürer, and countless others. Notably, these artists, largely men, contributed to centuries of art history portraying witches either as seductive temptresses or malevolent hags.
Yeah.
Reinforcing entrenched stereotypes. So fuck these guys for drilling that into our society's brain. But these are very beautiful works of art, I must say.
Yeah, the one is by Albrecht Dürer and the other one's by that Hans Green. So these will be in our notes.
The one on the left kind of has a Gustav kind of flair to it. It does, right? Mm-hmm. Is that one embossed or that's a wood cutting, right? That's what Gustav?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think you're right.
Very, very cool. So, however, a significant shift occurred as more female artists began to create their own interpretations of magical women. By the late 19th century, the witch transcended the limiting binary of being either a nubile temptress or a vile hag. No longer merely a visual spectacle for the male gaze, the witch acquired her own subjectivity, and with it, a sense of humanity. This evolution marked a turning point in the portrayal of witches, as women artists brought forth diverse and nuanced representations, challenging the narrow archetypes that had dominating depictions for centuries.
This next section in the book was titled Twitch of the Tongue, Language as Spell. This says, "'Tis the whore that is clamorous," by Reverend Cotton Mather. ornaments of the daughters of Zion. And this is saying it was best to hold one's tongue, be soft spoken, and to think before you speak.
I like to say that to some men that I know.
Yeah. To have a penis is to be clamorous. Today, women's language is subject to pervasive scrutiny and policing. Critiques dictate that employing uptalk or vocal fries, some girls talk like that.
I fucking can't with those girls. I'm sorry.
They renders us as ditzy or immature, while excessive use of the words like sorry is deemed a sign of weakness. Filter words such as like and or just, or what's another one we use all the time? So we say so a lot.
When I edit, I try to take a lot of that out
Me
because
too.
it just like drives me up a wall. I'm
Yeah.
like, God, we sound like we don't know what we're talking about.
I say like so freaking much. It's awful.
Yeah, same.
So guys, we know, we're aware.
I don't realize it as much until I edit, and then I'm like, oh my God. I said like 15,000 times in the past one sentence.
Yeah. Okay, we're on the same page. We get it.
Yeah.
These words are cautioned against, with the implication that they undercut our intelligence and betray a lack of confidence in our ideas. Yet, within the realm of female speech lies the potential space for resistance. Words like witch, slut, and feminist carry transformative power. While society may use these terms to police and persecute women, they also become bittersweet bedfellows in female empowerment. Coined as, quote, dark types.
Like darketypes, like archetypes.
Oh, okay. I'm dumb.
Yeah.
Darketypes, these evocative designations are both nebulous and impactful, often revealing more about the labelers than those labeled. Slut and witch encapsulate the stereotypes imposed on women in the male-dominated world, yet they also signal a form of female empowerment. Some women, in navigating the complexities of patriarchal perspectives, embrace these words with transgressive gusto, simultaneously accepting and refuting societal norms.
I love the new WITCH woman in total control of herself, because it's like we took back the power. We took back that word, so you can no longer use it and spin it as a negative thing, because now it means we're in control of our own shit, and you can't take that away from us.
Totally.
I'm so pissed.
I think that's what people are trying to do with this word slut. So
Yeah.
Sexual doula Evian, E-V''Y-A-N, Whitney, spreads the slut positive gospel of sex, love, and liberation through her blog and coaching service of the same name, and embraces the slut identity. After documenting her own struggles with sexual self-acceptance and erotic redemption through deeply personal writings on the subject, Whitney didn't take her newfound freedom and run, but instead now dedicates her days to midwifing other women through the same processes. She defines slut as, quote, a sexually liberated woman, someone who completely owns her erotic self, who loves her sexual body, and gives herself permission to express and actualize her desires however she chooses. Yes,
Go girl.
Radical feminist philosopher Mary Daly, I think we mentioned her earlier, concludes with a new spin on the C word? Cunt? No, crone. Okay, wait.
I like how we're on the same page there.
It says, quote, for women who have transvaluated this, a crone is one who should be an example of strength, courage, and wisdom. Witch, hag, crone, slut, feminist, there is alchemy within these words. If language can be used to suppress dissent against arbitrary and abusive authority and to name and vilify others, then perverting and reclaiming language can be used to challenge those very systems of oppression. You can't take words out of the mouths of oppressors, but you can subvert the intended meanings of their words.
That's right.
That's fucking right. It is always an imperfect process, but when women use terms like witch and slut strategically and repeatedly, they can help remove the sting of savage history that lies within their syllables. Just what Justine was saying. Queer was once a derogatory term for gay people, but because the gay community's collective action to wrest it away from the bigots, it is now embraced as the umbrella term for anyone who doesn't identify as cisgender and or heterosexual. Similarly, the word dyke was once an epitaph used to describe gay women, but is now proudly voiced by lesbians around the world. We are reclaiming and remodeling words used to describe us, words used to belittle our bodies and sexuality. Woman, mother, bitch, whore, frigid, aggressive, cunt.
There it is.
I love the word cunt. Pussy. In the process, we are reclaiming our lives.
Did you ever see the Sex and the City episode where Charlotte, she she gets her hoo-ha painted by a painter,
No.
and his wife walks in with a tray of like cookies and lemonade, and she's like, "You have a beautiful cunt, dear."
What the fuck?
It's fucking
That show
hysterical.
is off the rails.
That show is bananas. And I think that show is probably like one of the first shows that I ever saw as, a woman coming into my womanhood that just like made it okay for women to just be sluts.
We have a bit on that in our next episode. So
Pop culture, right?
I'm
We're
gonna
gonna
let
get
you
into
take
pop culture.
all of that. Yeah, our pop culture section.
Cool. Cool, cool.
So this last
Okay.
little bit is a quote. It says, "The tongue is a witch," and that's
Mhm.
by an Anglican minister of the name George Webb. He famously said this in 1619. And witches, sluts, and feminists are wielding its formidable power with magic in mind.
This next chapter, this is all about sex magic, the tools of pleasure. Heinrich Kramer, in his writing, specifically targeted, quote, female fornicators, categorizing them as women who were often identified as frequent sorceresses. Well before the publication of his tome, tales circulated about witches allegedly perverting domestic tools associated with womanhood for their own pleasure and using them to embark on airborne journeys. Okay, we're talking about a broomstick here. Embarking on airborne journeys to orgiastic Sabbaths.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure he's also talking about flying ointment. Remember we had that
Mhm.
conversation?
Yes.
Yeah. The witch hunts of the time were characterized by an intense focus and obsession with female sexuality, viewed as an abomination when expressed independently of men. This historical context sparks a reflection on contemporary issues, highlighting the persistent debates surrounding sexuality. Even in present day Alabama, a state where sex toys remain illegal.
Alabama,
Echoes,
what are
what
you
the fuck?
doing?
Alabama? That's okay. I'm just gonna keep.
She's so mad.
Echoes of the historical narratives emerge. The parallels draw attention to the enduring societal complexities and regulatory frameworks surrounding female sexuality, emphasizing how discussions initiated during historical witch hunts still resonate in modern debates over personal autonomy and sexual expression.
You want to take a deep breath?
What the fuck? Some states, I just don't understand.
I don't get it.
I don't get it.
The next section was entitled "The Spell of Seduction, Sex Work, and the Sacred Whore," we talked a little bit about in our last episode.
See,
So,
my whole thing is like, if it's not hurting you, then what the fuck do you care what people are doing with their bodies? Don't
hard
understand.
none, do what you want. One historical figure who uniquely blended the spiritual and the sexual was the Sacred Whore. These women served as priestesses in ancient Mesopotamia, Greece, and India, embodying the goddess of love in temples they presided over. Through sexual encounters with these priestesses, worshippers believed that they attained heightened states of religious connection. Merlin Stone, in When God Was a Woman, describes these priestesses' ability to induce divine ecstasy in their lovers, emphasizing the sacred and holy nature of sex as a gift from the female deity. I actually have this book.
Oh, yeah?
It's really good. It has, I thought I put in some of its chapters here. Maybe we touch on it again later. I cannot recommend this book enough. The chapters that probably would go along with this, if you guys do have this book, are chapter 7, it's called "The Sacred Sexual Customs," and then chapter 8, "They Offered Incense to the Queen of Heaven," had most of the stuff we're talking about today. I really love this book.
Very cool.
Where did I leave off? The archetype of the sexual whore is presented in both myths and historical documents. The Code of Hammurabi Babylonian law around 1754 BC offers special protections for temple prostitutes, and Greek historian Herodotus disapprovingly mentions sex rituals in the temple of Ishtar in the 5th century BC. Mesopotamian, Syrian, and Hebrew texts also link terms to sacred women with prostitution, contributing to ongoing discussions about the prominence of the sacred whore. While some argue for its historical validity, others attribute it to translation errors. Eve G's personal connection to the shadowy history sparks her fascination as she intuited a shared path with these priestesses during her experiences. The record on the subject remains incomplete, requiring both lay people and historians to discern biases and intentions in historical accounts of sacred whoredom. Writer and educator Britta Love, emphasizing the challenges in parsing evidence, acknowledging the difficulty in separating historical facts from Western and patriarchal biases. The discourse around the sacred whore has evolved over time, with late 19th century writers portraying orgies in temples, second wave feminists critiquing it, as a male fantasy, and modern perspectives ranging from exploitive fundraising to more nuanced interpretations. When examining the intricate connections between sexuality and spirituality, the focus isn't always on concrete proof. Instead, the discourse surrounding the sacred whore delves into the mystic and archetypal, acknowledging the complexity of historical narratives shaped by diverse perspectives and biases.
This next chapter is called Queering the Witch: Porn, Pleasure, Representation. And this quote is from the feminist porn book, and it says, "Society's dread of women who own their desire and use it in ways that confound expectations of proper female sexuality persists." End quote. So the witch has always embodied the sexual fears of men, whether they be of women finding sexual pleasure without them, emasculating them, or even castrating them. Portrayals of the woman as witch have thus reflected an unquenchable desire for the female sex mixed with fear, straddling horror and pleasure, disgust, and arousal. In a historical first, President Obama spoke out about this omnipresent issue, addressing the sexual double standards that have plagued women since well before the witch trials. He said, "We need to change the attitude that punishes women for their sexuality." End quote. He said this during the 2016 White House Summit on the United States of Women. Oh, and he goes on to say, it punishes women, but it gives men a pat on the back for their sexuality. A month later, the president outed himself as a feminist in an article he wrote for Glamour magazine, doubling down on his previous proclamation. I fucking love that.
Hell yeah.
That's awesome.
You go, Obama. You go, Barack. The next section, I think, continues on a little bit more with fashions called Undressing the Witch Fashion Style, Sartorial Spells. During the witch hunting era, the word, quote, glamour meant a magic spell, an illusion fabricated by a witch. Now it refers to an aesthetic practice that many women embrace, whether a surface transformation tailored through makeup and fashion, or something far more spellbinding. Like the witch, the slut is ever present on the catwalk too. While more fabric often means more witchy, leaving less to the imagination is the slut's job. Slut fashion is slightly trickier to pin down, but it is most often a designation given to clothing that's barely there, or that incorporates the signifiers of wild animals like leopard, the leopard print, cheetah print, snake, zebra. They become the surrogate skins of the untamed woman. That's right. Oh, I never thought about that. In 2013, T Magazine heralded the end of slut style. Fashion critic Susie Menkes wrote, "Out of Italy has come a fashion miracle, a look that suddenly puts, quote, a
La moda da puttana!
moda da puttana, hooker chic,
Oh my god, it's so
right
funny.
out of Vogue." Instead, she praised high button collars, long skirts, and long sleeves.
You don't know how much I heard that word growing up.
Yeah.
Like if I was trying to walk out of the house wearing red lipstick, I would be called a putana. Yeah. Do you remember the Marco that I sent you like ages ago? And she was going through my closet of all my hoochie mama dresses of like my dresses that I wore to clubs in my 20s. She's like, you walked out of the house wearing this? And I was like, you fucking let me.
I never would have let you.
And I was like, well, you did. But like I said, my mother's still slut shaming me to this day. So, oh god. Anyway, so before we dive into more fashion-related information concerning the formation of slut walks, let's touch back on an article that was mentioned a little bit ago, and this is called "What Makes a Slut? The Only Rule, It Seems, is Being Female," and that article is by Jessica Valenti. She says, "Sandra Fluke heard it when she talked about insurance coverage for birth control. Sarah Brown from Boston told me she was first called it at a pool party in the 5th grade because she was wearing a bikini. Courtney Caldwell in Dallas said she was tagged with it after being sexually assaulted as a freshman in high school.
Oh.
Many women I asked even said that it was not having sex that inspired a young man to start rumors that they were one. This is what is so confounding about the word slut. It's arguably the most ubiquitous slur used against women, and yet it's nearly impossible to define. The one thing we do know about, quote, slut, is that it's the last thing a woman would want to be. Society is so concerned over women and girls' potential for promiscuity that we create dress codes, school curricula, even legislations around protecting women's supposed purity.
Fuck that dress code shit
Yeah.
about shoulders not being out in the open.
And you went to Catholic school, right? Growing up?
Yeah.
Did you guys have the dress code, like the skirt's gotta be like
under
touching the
your,
knee or something
yes.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah.
all the girls would roll up the top. But yeah, you had to stand there and it had to be below, like an inch below your fingertips.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even I went to public school growing up, and even public schools had those rules. Like, if you wore
Hmm.
shorts, like in the summer when it was hotter, like toward the end of the school year, yeah, your fingertips had to be touching where your shorts ended.
Hmm. Yeah, even in high school, we couldn't wear tank tops.
Yeah. Yeah. Our arms couldn't be showing. So, conservative columnists opine that women have sex is a tantamount to a quote mental health crisis, and magazine stories wonder if we're raising a generation of prostitutes. I've been totally guilty of calling people a prostitute because, like, you walk around town, and we have a town fair every year, and that's when they all come out. The girls in high school wearing like the really
Hmm.
short belly shirts and the really short shorts, and I'm just like, my mother would never have let me out of the house wearing
I
that.
know. And that
At that age.
last episode when we talked about like just watching the little ones we nanny grow up to be young ladies,
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Yeah.
just
And
be
listen,
careful.
I'm totally guilty of it. Last week, I took Molly and her friends to the mall,
Hmm.
and she's 12,
Hmm.
right? 11, 12. She walked out of the house wearing a midriff, and her belly was showing, and no coat. She had like one little sweater
It's
with her. And
freaking January. My
it's
God.
January. This girl never wears a coat, and I'm yelling at her for wearing the coat. But like, we're at the mall, and her friends are dressed in like sweatshirts and like age appropriate. And like, I don't want to be that person that's gonna slut shame a 12-year-old, but at the same time, like, I don't want gross men looking at her in the
Yeah.
mall
Yeah.
because I know that's what's gonna happen. So
Hmm.
it's more out of a protection standpoint. Like,
Totally
I'm
understandable.
not trying to like regulate, and I'm not her mother. So at the end of the
Yeah,
day, it's up to her mom, like what she lets her walk out of the house wearing.
totally. Yeah.
But I was just like, Molly, put your sweater on. Put your sweater on.
Yeah.
And she's like, what? What's wrong with what I'm wearing? And I'm just like, I'm not going to have this
You're
discussion with you.
11.
You're 11, and there's gross people in the world. So just putting that out there.
I
Yeah.
think when age is a factor,
Mm,
it's appropriate to have concern.
yeah.
Right. If it's over 18 and they're out flaunting what they have, whatever.
Right.
But honey, we got to protect you. Unfortunately,
Right.
as men.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then, like, and then she wants to go off to this store with her friends by herself. And I'm just like, with all the fucking sex traffickers walking around,
Oh my God.
I'm like, no, you're
No.
not going there by yourself, especially not wearing that.
Hmm.
So, it's just out of love. I'm not trying to slut shame a 12-year-old. I'm just trying to do my mama bear job.
I know. You're a good
you
mama
know?
bear.
Anyway, so Lenora Tannenbaum, the author of Slut, Growing Up Female with a Bad Reputation, told me that a quote slut is just a girl or woman who deviates from norms of femininity. The quote slut is not necessarily sexually active, she just doesn't follow the gender script. So basically, if you guys want to read more on this book, it's by Leora Tannenbaum, and it got a 4.5 out of a 5-star rating. It only has 66 ratings, but it's got a 3.9 on Goodreads. So girls may be called sluts for any number of reasons, including being outsiders, early developers, victims of rape, targets of others' revenge. Often the labels has nothing to do with sex. The girls simply do not fit in. An important account of the lives of these young women, Slut weaves together powerful oral histories of girls and women who finally overcame their sexual labels with an analysis of the underlying problem of sexual stereotyping. Author Leora Tannenbaum herself was labeled a slut in high school. The confessional article she wrote for 17 about the experience caused a sensation and led her to write this book. And I was saying that a little bit in our last episode when we were talking about our own experiences in high school. And like, I was such a late bloomer. Well, number one, because my family was pretty strict as far as like
Hmm.
dating went, but like also high school comes with that, it's just such a judgmental period of time in like a kid's life. I didn't want rumors flying around about me, I just like didn't even want to deal with it.
I understand.
I mean, you're bound to be called a slut, like even if you don't have sex with multiple people,
One
or
way or another.
one way or another, you're going to be labeled a slut for whatever fucking reason. If the patriarchy doesn't like you, you're either slut or a witch,
Or which.
or yeah. So we can't win.
Or
Yeah.
a swamp slut.
Swamp slut.
T-shirts now
But
available in our Teespring.
yeah, but now like having this discussion and like opening the can of worms on this topic, I feel like it's easier to embrace those terms nowadays and take back that control.
No, I understand. I think, like I said, being a serial monogamous in high school, I always wore like dude clothes. I was part of the like the bleh crowd.
The black crowd.
But there were girls who I know I was like, wow, she's wearing that to school. And I liked getting away with it. But on the
Yeah,
other hand, I'm like, wow, I can't believe she feels comfortable enough to wear that to school.
right.
And I remember specifically like not homecoming, it was prom.
Yeah.
And I was runner up, and they called the girl's name who actually won. And the girl beside me said something like, oh, we all know how she got that spot.
Oh shit.
I'm
Damn.
just here to party. Going home.
I must say though, like I was friends with most of the promiscuous girls in high
Oh,
school.
yeah.
I was friends with all of them. And honestly, like I got along with them a lot more than I got along with the popular conservative girls. Like,
I see.
I wasn't trying to, live that life, but
Mm.
I respected them.
Yeah. Teach me your ways.
Teach me your slutty ways.
Okay.
Anyway, so going on, is this the same? This nebulous,
Yes.
unquantifiable quality of
The nebulous thing
yeah.
is the article still.
Okay, so yeah, so this is still part of the Jessica Valenti article. This says this nebulous, unquantifiable quality of the slur is what makes it so distressing. There's no way to disprove something that has no conclusive boundaries to begin with, and because it's meant to be more of an identity than a label, it's a term not easily shaken off. Quote, slut sticks to a person in a way that asshole never will. So what makes you a slut? It seems the only hard and fast rule is that you have to be a woman. Men, of course, are immune, absent, really, from the frenzy of concern. For instance, a new study out of the University of Michigan showed that teen girls who, quote, sexed are called sluts, while boys who do the same remain free from judgment. In another example, the American Medical Association breathlessly released a study in 2006 with the headline, quote, sex and intoxication more common among women on spring break, end quote, intended to warn women about their, quote, risky behavior while on break. But there was nothing about the men the majority of these young women would supposedly be having all this drunken sex with. As always, women are sluts and men are, well, men. For those who haven't had the pleasure of being called promiscuous, it may be hard to understand just how profound an impact it can have. Women's value and morality are closely, though wrongly, tied to their sexuality. So the term slut or any of its variations is an accusation with power behind it. So going on to say the power and weight that this word has, multiple girls have taken their own lives as of late after being slut shamed, an indication that the slur shows little sign of waning in the damage it does personally. So Tannenbaum, whose forthcoming book is I Am Not a Slut, Slut Shaming in the Age of the Internet, said that many of the girls she interviewed had intentionally embraced the term slut or the slut label as a badge of honor to advertise their sexual impairment. But she added they ended up losing control of the label when their peers turned it against them. Broader efforts to reclaim the word via marches like slut walks, for instance, have largely failed. While the anti-rape protests that spread across the country a few years ago were popular in terms of attendance and media coverage, and the author of this says she was an early supporter, many women felt the word slut was irredeemable, especially women of color for whom racist stereotypes about their supposed innate promiscuity always presented a unique danger. The slut idea hurts women politically as well. A safe contraceptive and a cancer vaccine were both held up for years because of fears they would make women, quote, slutty, and anti-choice legislators and activists insist that abortion providers are in the business of promiscuity and use that accusation as a way to defund critical healthcare providers like Planned Parenthood.
Are you mad? Because I'm mad, and everybody
Yeah.
listening should be fucking mad right
That's
now.
enraging. So, what is a quote slut then? It's any of us, and it's all of us, especially those of us who step out of line in some way, real or imaginary. It has little to do with the number of our sexual partners, or the way we dress or flirt, or if we take birth control or not. It's a warning more than a word, a reminder to women that we must adhere to the narrow standards of femininity and sexuality set out for us, or be punished accordingly. And in that way, the real meaning of slut is terrifyingly clear.
So let's talk about the slut walk. This is a global movement against rape culture and victim blaming, and it emerged in 2011 after a Toronto police officer's controversial remark. The movement, originating in Canada, rejects the idea that a person's clothing justifies sexual assault. Co-founder Sonia Barnett and Heather Jarvis redefined the term slut as empowering, challenging societal norms. Despite facing criticism for their ideology and methods, Slutwalk sparked international conversations addressing systematic issues in how society perceives sexual assault. This follows Constable Michelle Sanguinetti.
Yeah.
On January 24th, 2011, Toronto Police Constable Michael
Oh,
Sanguinetti and another officer from 31st Division spoke on crime prevention, addressing the issue of campus rape at a York University safety forum at Osgoode Hall Law School. During the talk, Sanguinetti interrupted the more senior officer and said, "I've been told I'm not supposed to say this. However, women should avoid dressing like sluts in order not to be victimized."
wow.
Wow, Sanguinetti.
Mm.
After an article that reported on the situation received international attention, Sanguinetti apologized for the remarks, saying, "I made a comment which was poorly thought out and did not reflect the commitment to the Toronto Police Service, to the victims of sexual assault. Violent crimes such as sexual assault can have a traumatizing effect on their victims. My comment was hurtful in this respect. I'm embarrassed by the comment I made, and it shall not be repeated."
Let's just go out on a limb here and say that he said it because that's how he feels, and he's
Mm-hmm.
just retracting it now to
He's
cover his
backpedaling.
ass. And
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
I'm
Keep
sure
his
he feels.
job.
I'm sure he feels the same way,
Yeah.
even if he, tried to, cover his ass.
Yeah, fuck that guy. The movement gained traction following Justice Robert Dewar's controversial remarks during a Winnipeg sexual assault case. Slutwalk played a significant role in highlighting the case, leading to Dewar's apology and the overturning of the conviction. This incident underscored the need to address systematic issues within the justice system. So their website states, "We are tired of being oppressed by slut shaming, of being judged by our own sexuality and feeling unsafe as a result. Being in charge of our sexual lives should not mean that we are opening ourselves to an expectation of violence regardless if we participate in sex for pleasure or work. No one should equate enjoying sex with attracting sexual assault." The inaugural Slut Walk in Toronto in 2011 exceeded expectations, drawing over 3,000 participants. The movement emphasizes rejecting victim blaming, slut shaming, and sexual profiling. Subsequent global events continue advocating for a world free from fear and victimization. Slutwalk's key message is to challenge harmful narratives surrounding sexual assault survivors and promote empowerment. The movement advocates for a society where clothing choices do not justify violence. Despite facing criticism, Slutwalk has sparked crucial conversations uniting individuals globally against rape culture. In essence, Slutwalk serves as a powerful platform for dialogue, pushing back against societal norms and advocating for a world where no one is blamed or shamed based on their appearance. I don't know if those are still going on. I don't know if they're annual. I don't know if
Slut
they are
walks.
still a thing. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about slut shaming versus player praising, sexual inequality, I guess men versus women, right? Why are women looked down upon for embracing their sexuality and men are just praised for it? This is from insightUNR.com. So, sexual equality is not gender equality. Sexual equality is the freedom to express yourself and your sexual desires on a healthy, appropriate level, just as much as the opposite sex. It's being able to initiate courtship just because it's what you want. It's not being afraid of what people will think of you or your behavior. Sexual equality is being able to freely communicate and act on your sexual desires so long as it harms none without fear of being shunned or outcast. Sexual equality is the idea of treating men and women as equals, whether it's a long-term, committed relationship or a casual hookup. In her book, Hard to Get, 20-something Women and the Paradox of Sexual Freedom, psychotherapist Leslie Bell talks about social pressures young women encounter when it comes to sex. She mentions a 28-year-old girl named Claudia, whose quote, family would be horrified if they knew about the number of sexual partners she'd had, that they would be devastated and disappointed, end quote. Claudia is a sexually active young woman who has difficulty coping with her desires, yet enjoys, quote, the pleasure of being touched by someone she found so attractive, end quote. While men feel free to express and indulge in such desires, women are held to a higher societal standard. Bell describes how many young women struggle quote, in how to manage their own desires to get what they want from sex and love, end quote. Women are burdened with socialized sexual restraint and a forced moral responsibility that is not experienced by their male counterparts. Men, for the most part, have the freedom to have sexual relationships without facing familial or societal judgment or condemnation. Women are held to strict expectations when it comes to their sexuality. Quote, despite all the advances of women over the past 50 years, these experiences are frequently split into masculine and feminine ones, with the masculine being overvalued socially and psychologically, end quote. Women have made leaps and bounds in the professional world, yet have not made much progress in harnessing their right to freely express themselves the same way as men do sexually. While it may seem perfectly reasonable for women to be able to conduct themselves in an equal manner as men, there is a fine line between being experimental and being a slut. While gender equality has made significant advances, it still needs work, and it is not sexual equality. The current average age of first sexual intercourse for girls is 17, leaving 10 years of sexual and relationship activity before the current average age of marriage at 27. That leaves an average period of 10 years for a young woman to navigate adult life and develop adult relationships, but that can be easier said than done. Women, quote, often contend with messages from their families, religions, and partners that they ought not to be sexually assertive or sexually active at all, end quote. Women are free to live their lives how they choose and exercise their personal freedoms, yet from multiple angles, those freedoms are severely limited. In a way, a woman's sexual freedom is merely an illusion of freedom. If in an age of unprecedented gender equality, women are still being taught what is and is not acceptable behavior of them. Quote, instead of feeling free, 20-something women are weighed down by vying cultural notions about the kind of sex and relationships they should be having in their 20s, end quote. Young women hear so many different viewpoints on how they should live their lives that many don't even know what they want. Some look for husbands as soon as possible, whereas others have embraced the idea of sexual exploration and experimentation to the point of blocking out any kind of potential serious relationship. Quote, with relationships, women hear that they ought to use their 20s to live it up and not necessarily to be serious about relationships. End quote. It is not uncommon for 20-something-year-old women to fear being tied down, even when it comes to passing up a real opportunity for a happy and healthy relationship. Human beings need affectionate interaction for optimal emotional stability. Bell states that, quote, young women often struggle to admit that they need anyone, but it's particularly difficult to say that they need a man, end quote. In wanting desperately to prove their independence, women may be leading healthy sex lives but closing themselves off to love. Music and television shows flood our minds with archetypes of the, quote, independent woman, yet every young woman is closely monitored by those around her for evidence of any, quote, slutty behavior. The Destiny's Child song, which I'm pretty sure we mentioned before, the Independent Woman Part 1, called on young girls and women in 2000 to aspire to rely completely on themselves. The house I live in, I bought it, car I'm driving, I bought it, I depend on me.
I depend
Yes.
on me.
Yeah. So these are powerful lyrics. So for young girls growing up in households with married stay-at-home moms, it might seem like in order to attain those goals, a girl should never become a married mother. Add another tense factor, the ticking clock. Bell says that modern women spend their 20s hearing gloomy forecasts about their chances of marriage if they don't marry before 30. Dude, I was 31. I think I was 31 or 32 when I got married.
I think I was 23 the first time. Way too
Yeah.
young, everybody.
You don't even know who you are as a person at
I
20.
think I was 28, 29 next time.
29. The second time?
Yeah.
Yeah, but like I feel like you still don't even know who you are. You're like fresh out of high school, out of college at that point. Like my mom had me at 23. So
Oh my
she got
God.
married even younger than that, maybe.
This is so scary.
Yeah. Yeah, she was a baby when she had me. A baby having a baby.
Babies having babies.
Babies having babies. But also their chances of conceiving a baby if they don't get pregnant before 35.
You know, they won't take your eggs if you're over 29.
What?
And I was like, can I still sell my eggs? I cannot.
No.
Too old.
They expired.
They won't take my eggs.
Pretty sure mine are drying up at this point. So one idea that echoes throughout a woman's 20s is have fun as long as you can, but quit before you fall behind. Here are two prevalent yet contradictory views on how young women should live their lives. Bell believes that, quote, splitting, which is a tendency to think in either or patterns and to insist that one cannot feel two seemingly contradictory desires at once, has become a widespread sociological phenomenon among young women, end quote. Bell describes how the harsh difficulty of trying to reconcile opposing viewpoints within oneself lead women to develop anxieties about sexual relationships. She elaborates. Confused about freedom and what it is to be a woman today, young women often split their social and psychological options into independence, strength, safety, and control versus relatedness, vulnerability, need, and desire, as though they're mutually exclusive and not equally important to human development. College age women aspire to be as free, strong, and independent as possible, so they learn to fear anything that can undermine those qualities or be perceived as weakness. Quote, vulnerability, needs, desire, and intimacy then often become new taboos for young women, experiences to be avoided rather than embraced. In this way, women can become their own worst enemies, as not knowing how to deal with these confusing and conflicting ideologies can become very frustrating and self-detrimental. Even the sexual health of women is less important to society than the sexual health of men. In her USA Today article, Women's Sexual Health Deserves Equal Attention, Laura Berman points out that Viagra was approved for the treatment of male impotence in 1998, yet there is still no FDA-approved medication for successful treatment of female sexual dysfunction. This is another indication that society values the sexual experiences of men over those of women. In a study titled Scripting Sexual Passivity, a Gender Role Perspective, researchers state that college-age women who reported engaging in passive sexual behavior also reported less sexual arousability. So by conforming to traditional gender roles, sexually passive women are effectively enjoying sex less than women with developed sexual agency. Berman states that, quote, in addition to low sexual desire, women can also have problems with arousal, orgasm, and pain, end quote. Alleviating these issues would seem to benefit both sexes, so why hasn't it happened yet? Why is the sexual agency of males more important than that of females? In a study titled Young Women's Struggles for Sexual Agency, the role of parental messages, researchers define sexual agencies as initiative taking, awareness of desire, and the individual's confidence and freedom to express sexuality in behaviors. The study confirmed what several previous studies have stated about the way the modern world views sexuality with each gender. It seems there's a double standard that young men's sexual behavior is typical and expected, an innate healthy desire that must be expressed. However, young women's sex is viewed as inherently more dangerous, more suspect, and thus must be controlled. Does this sound like the world we live in? Men are expected to hit on women, not the other way around. I'm sorry, but I went after my husband. He did not pursue me.
There you go. Nice. I had to propose to my own husband.
That's right, you did.
Come on, man.
Look at us going against societal standards. Look at us.
Isn't Queen Elizabeth?
But like, I'm saying, like, does that make us sluts? Hey, slut, hey! Are we sluts? Yeah, so there is a birth control pill for women, not for men. For ages, women have been socialized into being passive and obedient to men. Less than a century ago, women couldn't even vote. That is a significant system of control that was only relatively recently relinquished. It isn't fair that it's condonable for men to have sex with whoever they want, whenever they want, when that very philosophy is considered repulsive when utilized by women. Researchers state that, quote, traditional gender-based sexual roles dictate sexual passivity for women but sexual agency for men, end quote. Men are sometimes even encouraged to have sex with as many women as possible, a goal that is somehow immoral for women. Like American Pie, right? Like that entire movie, all those dudes are just trying to get laid.
Part of me these days is like, how did they even get away with making that movie?
A lot of movies in the 90s, or even before that, like a lot of movies growing up are so one-sided. Like,
oh, so cringy.
All the double standards in early 90s teen movies. So in American society, there is a huge responsibility on women and men to experience sex within the limitations of their gender roles. Men are expected to do the courting. Men are expected to entertain sexual pursuits. Shannon K. Gilmartin, senior research scientist at the California Institute of Technology, finds, quote, the pressure men feel to be sexually active just as intense as the pressure to avoid sex and stifle sexual feelings among women, end quote. Men are more or less expected to fool around with as many women as they want. Women are expected to engage in conventional dating and traditional relationships and to, quote, avoid at all costs being viewed as a slut, end quote. Women have to constantly make choices keeping in mind their best image. These differences in societal limitations come from subtle and insidious cultural factors such as the patriarchy. They stigmatize sexual activity outside of the marriage bed. If a man engages in sexual activity on a frequent basis with possibly multiple partners, he is sometimes referred to as a player. I don't want to be a player no more.
Don't want no scrubs.
By people who know him and praise for his behavior. If a woman engages in sexual activity outside of a stable relationship, she is often met with remarks such as slut and shamed for anything near the same behavior. Gil Martin explains that women are held to exacting and conflicting standards of femininity that demand they be sexually desirable and chaste at the same time, which often leads to confusion surrounding sex, disassociation from sexual feelings, and uninformed decisions about sex. Women are expected to be sexy virgins, to wait for men to initiate every step of courtship. When they stray from this socio-cultural script, their behavior is seen as deviant. These societal boundaries can create anxious or guilty feelings about sex, or drive a woman to close herself off emotionally.
It is such a mixed bag of like what we're expected to be, right?
Right.
Yes, be the perfect housemaker, be charming, and but also be a slut in the bedroom, but also don't be a slut on the streets. But do you know,
Right.
like, what the fuck? I think there was, I don't think I included it, but there was a little portion of another article that was a husband didn't want oral sex from his wife because she's the mother of his children and she
Yeah.
kisses the children with that mouth, and he's like, no,
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
What the fuck? I'm so confused.
Yeah. Or as Ludacris said, right? Was it Ludacris? A lady in the streets, but a freak in the bed.
There you go.
I think that's Ludacris. I don't know. I don't listen to a lot of rap, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I don't think it was him that said that.
There's a book I just read called Latte Darling, and it was kind of like an age gap romance kind of thing. And his thing was like, darling in the streets, but daddy in the sheets, or something like that. I'm like,
Oh,
oh shit.
scandalous. You've been
Oh
reading a
shit.
lot of
Okay.
scandalous shit lately.
I know. It's, it's fine. I'm hitting my read goal for the year.
Okay, okay. Awesome, awesome. So the research team in the average study found that, quote, almost every participant described a fear of sex and connected this fear to general insecurities about sexuality, end quote. What kind of world are we living in when women are afraid of sex? This fear only increases the passivity that was socially engineered to keep men dominant of women. Researchers found that, quote, passive behavior is linked to diminished sexual satisfaction for men as well as women, end quote. So this means that developing sexual agency is the key to any person, male or female, enjoying their sex life to the fullest. Women need to be actively passionate about their sexuality, and until women see themselves as sexual actors with desires, needs, and priorities of their own, and not merely as objects of men to be desired, they will never be they will never be capable of true and full sexual health, end quote.
I don't feel like a sexy person. I'm a hobgoblin troll
Neither
half the
do
time.
I.
Yeah.
Can I tell you, this might be a little too much information. My mother bought me this beautiful negligee for my wedding night, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't fucking wear it. Put on sweatpants after my wedding because I was exhausted.
Like,
The
I
last thing
didn't want to
I
give
wa-
Avi any false hope. You're like,
Right.
this is what you're getting.
The last thing I wanted to do was fucking put that on, after wearing a dress and heels all day. I just wanted my sweatpants and a pillow. I'm pretty sure I fell asleep in the lobby when everybody else was
Oh my
partying.
gosh, hell
The
yeah,
after
shutting it
party.
down.
Everybody was partying at the hotel after the wedding, and I was passed out on the lobby couch because I was exhausted.
Gotcha. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's funny.
But yeah, like I'm not too into lingerie. Like
No, not
there's
even
some
just like dressing that way, but like exuding or feeling confident about, I don't
being
know, when we in
sexual.
my single years, there have been men that have said, oh, like, yeah, I was into you. I was like, if I saw you across the room, there is no way in hell I would have had the confidence to go and talk to you. You are
Mhm.
way too good looking. Like, you're a good looking dude. There
Yeah.
was a movie, I was getting to a point, but there's a show called Z. I think we talked
Yeah.
about it ages ago, but it's Zelda Fitzgerald's story, basically. Christina Ricci
Okay.
plays her.
Oh.
And it's a really, really good series. There's also a book that kind of led me into a depression, but her character, her depiction of her, she's so comfortable with her sexuality. Like after watching
Yeah.
that, I was like, oh, I can be a little minx too sometimes, but that was short lived for sure.
A little minx. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, most of the time I'm just like, Erin, you get what you get, honey.
Yeah, kind of the same.
Yeah.
Sorry, Avi. So, in her study, Changes in College Women's Attitudes Towards Sexual Intimacy, Gilmartin conducted a very thorough case of 14 college women. By interviewing the women during their freshman and sophomore years, Gilmartin discovered that their perceptions about sex did change over time. The freshman women described sex as, quote, risky, scary, and instrumental.
Do you think it's because the men are having so much sex with so many people? Like they don't
Yeah,
want to catch their nasty diseases.
right.
Oh, go ahead. Keep reading.
I just
Sorry.
no, I'm just like thinking in my brain, like I want to keep quoting Sex in the City, but I'm just like, just keep reading. There's so many like Sex in the City references, like I'm just like popping in my brain.
Bursting. Just sling them out when you think about them and keep moving.
Bursting. Well, the one that I was just thinking about, what you just said, girls are afraid of catching whatever guys, are carrying around because they're little sluts. All these men are sluts.
Right.
There's an episode where Miranda, she actually has chlamydia.
Miranda?
She has chlamydia and she's gotta like her doctor tells her to write out the list of all the men she's fucked. And it's like
Uh-oh.
pages and pages long, and she's like calling all these people, and she's like having to tell them that like you should go get checked. I have chlamydia, and we slept together. Blah blah blah.
Oh
And
man.
like finally, like she tells this one guy that she has chlamydia, and he's like, "Yeah, I know, I had it too." And she's like, "Oh, well then maybe you're the one that gave it to me." And like he was like being such a dick about it.
God
Yeah,
damn.
that whole I fucking love that show. I love that show. It just challenges the double standard, and it's great. What we just said, the girls were primarily concerned, going back to the study that this woman did on these 14 college women, they're concerned about STIs, unwanted pregnancy, the risk of emotional trauma. They were also afraid of sexual intimacy. Some did find that they could use sex to handle certain situations, such as to solve a fight with a boyfriend. How many of us had the pity sex, or like the sex to just get over the fight or just move on, like, right? It's
Move
like
on. Yep. It was the
makeup,
eraser. Let's just start over.
makeup sex, right? Let's little brush under the rug sex, brush that issue under the rug, it'll come out later in another fight. So
Yeah, totally.
that's just how we've used sex in the past. But by the end of sophomore year, their attitudes towards sex had changed. After a few casual encounters or short lived relationships, most of the women became comfortable, even confident, with sexual intimacy. The girls hadn't formed any sort of real desires or ideals of sex, more so, quote, sex signified or cost less than it used to, such that it was easier to imagine or actually have. I don't know what that's implying. Do you?
Maybe like the birth control or the plan not plan B. Is that what it's called? Morning after
Yeah.
pill?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe. It says this might sound like an improvement, but it's merely a lessening of the psychological detriment assigned to young women by society. Everyone should feel free to desire sex and to act on those desires, so long as it doesn't cause harm to anyone else, right?
Hell yeah.
It's kind of like being a witch.
Yep.
And what's the Wiccan read? And
Do
harm none,
do what you will, harm
what you
none.
will. And yeah.
Take no shit.
It's the same thing. As long as you're not hurting anybody, do what you want.
And it's consensual.
And it's consensual,
Of a
exactly.
legal age.
That too. That's important. So the women in the study also learned over time and experienced that sex can be separate from romance, and after college that, quote, college romance was unstable and college men were unreliable, end quote. In a sense, young women's ideas of sexuality and their role in it evolve over time. The conclusion of the study is tragically put that, quote, young women must constantly negotiate who they are and what they stand for, sexually and otherwise, in relational systems for which terms are almost invariably set by the imperatives of dominant masculinities, end quote. There's two more paragraphs. So female writer Diablo Cody broke boundaries when it was Jennifer's Body, what we were talking about before. Megan Fox's title character defended her promiscuous behavior in the culturally hip horror comedy film Jennifer's Body by saying, quote, "You are such a player hater," end quote. Such a predominantly masculine statement coming from a strong female character puts cultural sexual issues in perspective. In the film, Jennifer feels empowerment by seducing the men she's attracted to. This behavior leads her to become a demonic succubus, who then preys on men in a fatalistic sense.
I need to
When
watch this movie.
You never seen it?
I've never seen it.
It's pretty good. It's pretty funny.
Okay.
When protagonist needy confronts her, "You're killing people," Jennifer replies. "No, I'm killing boys."
Yeah, I've seen that one. No. I'm killing boys.
Yeah. This revolutionary character reverses traditional gender roles, going so far as to say that boys aren't people. At one point, Jennifer tells her, PMS isn't real. Uh, PMS isn't real, needy. It was invented by the boy run media to make us seem like we're crazy. End quote. Jennifer feels that even in the rise of equality, she is still living in a world that was shaped by men. While Jennifer engages in sexual activity with multiple partners, there is a certain beauty in that she doesn't worry about what people think, and no one condemns her personal choices. Of course, Jennifer is another victim of Leslie Bell's spitting. She shuts out any ideas of a stable relationship for fear of losing her strength and independence. So, in closing, society as a whole needs to change its perception of gender roles in order to properly accommodate female sexual agency. Quote, currently, the default framework equates healthy adolescent female sexuality with no sex or traditionally scripted sex, end quote. That's just not okay. It's not fair. It's not equal. Equality is something that should have no limits. Men and women need to be treated as equals in every way, including sexuality. Until that happens, and it may be a very long time, or maybe fucking never, the rate we're going, young women must somehow face that challenge alone and against the tide.
Wow. So is splitting, so it says she shuts out any ideas of stable relationship for fear of losing her strength and independence. So in a sense, that's Jillian. Is that
Oh,
right?
did I say spitting? Yeah, splitting.
Splitting. No, so yeah, I said it incorrectly.
No,
Splitting.
no, before I said spitting.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Freudian slip. Ah, all
Oh my
right.
God. All right. Anyway.
We have just one little bit left. I could not find the author on this. It was just in a blog, and it says, in praise of sluts, whores, and other promiscuous women. This was much longer, so you can visit our show links to read the rest, but I just took bits and pieces here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So it says, does the concept of a slut or whore even make sense? Personally, this person doesn't think so. Okay, I'm going to read it how they wrote it. If they
Okay.
say, heck, we can't even figure out what these terms actually mean. According to merriam-webster.com, a whore is, quote, a woman who engages in sexual acts for money, prostitute, also a promiscuous or immoral woman. It is derived from the Old Norse from whore, Horrr, meaning adulteress.
Oh, whore.
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 The O has a line above it that has a
Yeah.
specific name. I don't know what it is, though.
Mhm.
But according to Wikipedia, on the other hand, the English word whore derives from the Old English word hora, from the Proto-Germanic kahoran, which means prostitute, which derives from the Proto-Indo-European root ka, meaning desire, a root which has also given us the Latin,
Caritas.
the Latin caritas, love and charity, and the French cher, meaning dear or expensive.
Oh,
All right, come on, that was
okay.
pretty good. So,
That was
a
good.
whore is a woman who takes money for sex, or maybe she doesn't, or maybe she's an adulteress, or maybe she's just someone who is promiscuous, but regardless, she is someone whom we all desire. Clear as mud, ain't it? As for slut, Merriam-Webster says she is, quote, a promiscuous woman, especially prostitute. Again, we seem a little unclear on the whole money piece. And according to Wikipedia, although the ultimate origin of the word slut is unknown, it first appeared in the Middle Ages in 1402 as slut, with the meaning and a dirty, untidy, or slovenly woman. Even earlier, Geoffrey Chaucer used the word sluttish in 1386 to describe a slovenly man. However, later use appears almost exclusively associated with women. The modern sense of a, quote, sexually promiscuous woman dates to at least 1450. Another early meaning was kitchen maid or drudge, circa 1450, a meaning retained as late as the 18th century, when hard knots of dough found in bread were referred to as sluts' pennies. Cute.
What? That's adorable.
That's really cute. So a
Sluts
slut
pennies.
may or may not have sex. She may simply bake bread. She may
Okay.
be just physically dirty, and she may or may not take money for any of the sex that she either does or does not have. This seems like Griffin Dunn talking. And until the mid 14th century, she might have even been a he, and now she is exclusively a she.
I'm gonna start calling Avi my bread slut because he's been back on that
The
sourdough
sourdough?
kick.
Good for
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
Slut pennies. Yeah, sluts
Slut
pennies.
pennies.
Use it.
Funny.
Unapologetically, quote, promiscuous. They say, I think part of the antidote to all of the misogynist anti-sex poison is to hold up images of women who are unapologetically sexual, who are empowered, who don't care if they are seen by others as being promiscuous. Merriam-Webster rather conservatively defines promiscuous as not being as being not restricted to one sexual partner. But I prefer another definition, the one that defines promiscuous as anyone who is having more sex than you are, because that definition shows just how subjective and relative the term actually is. Throughout history, there have been women who have actively resisted society's attempts to control them, their bodies, and their sexuality. Women like the 19th century French novelist Amante Dupin, Amantine Dupin, I don't know, Amantine Dupin, who wrote under the pen name George Sand. Dupin had numerous male lovers and quite likely at least one lover who was female as well. She often dressed in men's clothing. Have you ever seen Victor Victoria with what's her name who played in Sound of Music?
Victor Victoria.
I gotta watch
That's
that
not
movie
this.
again.
That's not the story about Victoria's Secret.
No, 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 no.
No, no, I
Anyway,
haven't.
we'll continue forward. We'll get through
Okay.
this. She often dressed in men's clothes because of their practicality, and shockingly for the time, she also smoked tobacco in public. She was unapologetic about her lifestyle, even though she was harshly attacked for her behavior by the moralists of her time, who were not so different from the moralists of our time. Another prominently pro-sex woman was Mae West, an American stage and screen actress who boldly asserted her rights to have sex on her terms. As a young woman, she penned and staged a play that was actually called Sex. In 1927, it was shut down on moral grounds, and West was sentenced to jail for 10 days for harming the morality of the youth of New York City. But if anything, the morals change only the morals charge. The morals
Yeah.
the morals charge only emboldened her, and she made a career out of being daring.
That is pretty daring for that time. That's bold.
That's bold. Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
Savage. So safe sex requires sexual safety. People who teach sexual health often focus on, quote, safer sex techniques, practices, and products. And while their work is absolutely essential, sometimes I feel there should be more attention in the work paid to issues of consent. Because
Mhm.
sex that isn't fully consensual isn't psychologically safe. It hurts people regardless of how much latex is involved. And
Yeah.
we also need to raise our field of vision and look around at the horizons that are present in our
Oh,
entire.
hazards.
Oh, thank you. I'll just say that over. And we also need to raise our field of vision and look around at the hazards that are present in our entire sexual environment as well. Our sexual environment is badly contaminated by puritanical, patriarchal attitudes that attempt to strip women of their sexual power, with both the tragic and ironic. Tragic because the vast majority of humanity would very much like to be able to fully embrace and thoroughly inhabit our sexual selves. But society tries to deny that right to women. How much sex any woman or man does or does not have is really none of anybody's business. But they say, I believe that confronting a patriarchal society that attempts to control and or kill women's sexuality is my business. Because I need our society to be a sexually healthier place. I need that for all of us, but I especially need it for their daughter, who will grow into a young woman. And as she increasingly negotiates her way through the culture, she will see how the term slut and a whore are used to bully, to brutalize, and to humiliate women and girls. We need to help to build a world where people of any gender, feel free to have just as much or as little good sex, as they want. And by good sex, I mean that is oh, and by good sex, I mean sex that is enthusiastic, consensual, safe, and ethical. And they say ethical sex, according to Dossie Easton and Janet Hardy. Huh, that hurt my mouth. Dossie Easton and Janet Hardy, the liberationists who argue for reclaiming the term slut in their book, The Ethical Slut. The full title is Ethical Slut, A Practical Guide to Polyamory, Open Relationships, and Other Adventures by Janet Hardy, means not deceiving anyone about your activities. You don't have to broadcast it to the world what you're up to, but don't lie about it either. Building such a world creates a social context where people of all genders, and again, this includes women, have the social permission to have a whole lot of sex with one partner or with many, or to have just a moderate amount of sex with a modest number of lifetime partners, even just one, or to not have sex with anyone else at all. And any choices that women makes hold on and any choices that a woman makes along that rich and varied continuum of human sexuality need to be totally okay, without her having to encounter any kind of judgment or criticism from anybody.
Yeah.
I think we
So
need to
you go.
restart so we can.
Oh shit.
I
All
know, I was
right.
so close.
At the house on Magnolia Street, would you go down to Magnolia Street where the wisteria grow wild? At the house of magic and mystery, so would you go down to Magnolia Street?
This latte is giving me gas.